being recorded right now.
There we go. Well, we may have some more joining us. It's going to be fun this time because we're going to talk today about these new developments that are occurring with this increase brownfields bipartisan infrastructure law. So we're going to talk about that, and then Steve's going to talk about the May 4th meeting we had a couple of weeks ago and go over some of the highlights of that. So we're going to cover all those things today and get ready for the announcements that are going to be made soon. So because we're a small group, we like to introduce everyone. So those of us who've been around for a while, we like to sit and talk about each other and to each other before it starts. But let's get started. A lot of this program is about networking, and we feel it's kind of important to get to know the other faces so that when we do get together face to face, everyone knows who the other people they're talking about are. And it does take a little bit of time, but since we only we have small groups in these PLCs, we can do it. So I'm going to start off with Steve at the upper left. Steve?
Okay. Yeah. Hi. My name's Steve Fenton, and I'm working with Mike with HMTRI. And it's good to see everyone. And good to see Nolan has returned from Hawaii safely.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm Mike Senyu, a facilitator of the PLCs. Janet?
Janet Curley with Santa Fe Community College. Not on fire at the moment.
Rita?
Rita Ware, Region 6 Project Officer.
Great. Deborah?
Deborah Trevorrow, City of Tacoma, Contract and Program Auditor, looking to get us back into the game.
Yes, we missed you for the last year or so. So we're looking forward to having you apply and get a grant again. Great program. Abby?
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm from the Auberly Employment Institute in McKeesport, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Christine?
My name is Christine. I'm an environmental planner for the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments in Connecticut.
Fantastic. Thinking of applying? Are you involved right now?
Yeah, so we do a ton of work with brownfields, and we heard about the opportunities for workforce development to do some training for possible brownfield workers, and we just want to learn more.
Fantastic. We're excited to be working with you in the next month or so before the applications are due. Nolan?
Hi, I'm Nolan Curtis. I've been working with Mike and Steve off and on for about 25 years with brownfields, environmental justice, and economic development. And I'm a former contractor to the U.S. Department of Energy at cleanup at nuclear production sites.
And Desiree, you're with Christine.
I always have to make sure my mic is down. Good afternoon. My name is Desiree Blanchard with the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments, and I'm the Communications and Community Engagement Manager.
Good. Jay Galatos.
Hi, this is John Galiotos. I'm the Dean of Workforce Development, and we have a brownfield grant and working with the various areas associated with that in the city of Shreveport.
Fantastic. Hey, Jake.
Hi, Mike. Jake Murkowski from the Auberly Employment Institute in McKeesport, Pennsylvania.
Okay, and Shan Robertson.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Shan Robertson. I'm with the City of East Point, and we received the Brownsfield grant last year, and we're still working on our hands-on training.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Amy.
Hello, this is Amy Penny with the Alaska Forum, and we have a environmental worker training and apprenticeship program.
Great. And Christine.
There seems to be quite a few Christines. Is this me, Christine?
Blanche.
Awesome. So I'm Christine. I'm a Brownsfield grantee in 2021 with Sobro and the City College of New York. And we are starting our third cohort in a month of our Brownfield training program. And I'm super excited.
That's great. Hey, Noemi, how are you?
I'm good. It's Noemi Emmerich Ford. I work for US EPA in our Region 9 office. I'm place-based in Los Angeles.
Sabrine. Breen Martin, KSU tab. Hey.
Oh, yeah. Hey, just listening in, and I hope that's all right. So I'm Sabina Martin. I'm a partner to the K-State Technical Assistance to Brownfields program that provides free assistance to communities dealing with brownfield issues. And every once in a while, I get to review JT applications. So I just want to,
we're trying to
get more information.
We're going to be working as closely as we can with the tab grantees, and
awesome.
we've had that one discussion. We're going to be having more, and the theme of the next year is communications. So,
yep.
Welcome to the PLCs. These are very informal. You're going to find out, but we hope that peer-to-peer networking can help some of the grantees with their programs. Rachel.
Hello, I'm in my car.
I hope you're not driving.
No, I'm actually picking up my kid from school. It's her last day of school, so.
Good for them.
Yeah, we submitted our stuff for the conference, and we're excited. We can't wait to go.
Fantastic. You know, that's a good point. You can call in if you can. We've had people call in from phone booths at meetings. That's fine. That's fine. Hey, Linda. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Linda Morgan. I am a Brownfield project manager here in Region 5, as well as the job training coordinator. Thanks, Mike.
And Michael.
Michael Long, that's me. I'm Full Employment Counsel. We've been grantees from the Brownfield project for about 4 years now. So we're in Kansas City, Missouri, and we're excited to be here.
Michael and Amy and Abby, and we have this mix of experienced grantees and new grantees and grantee wannabes, and we rely as I've said, very heavily on networking and peer-to-peer learning. What things work for some people might work for you, and so that's the spirit of these calls. Every 2 weeks, same time, same place. We normally go into, Steve will normally go into news from Washington, but we're going to switch up a little bit today. I'm going to talk about what's happened, actually announced at our May 4th virtual mid-year grant program. I just want to go over that and the implications that might have, and a little bit about what else is happening in EPA with the assessment cleanup and revolving fund grants and how that relates to job training, a little bit about Brownfields 22 coming up. So let's take a dive into this. And we are in a learning process ourselves, actually, and there's going to be a lot of guidance we're going to need from EPA on the ramifications of these changes. This is the catalyst for this was the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which brought in the possibility of a lot of money into the Brownfields job training program, and also into the Brownfields program itself. It gives us an opportunity to do some great things, and probably an opportunity to screw things up too. So we want to look at this and see how this could work for our grantees. Let me go over it a little bit. They renamed it again, so now we're Brownfields job training, so BJT. So you can go back and change everything to BJT now from the past two acronyms. Brownfields job training. It's going to be increased from 200,000 to up to 500,000 in grants, and up to 5 years. Now, those are simple statements, but let's dig into this, and we're going to need guidance as much as you do. If you take a 3-year grant at 200,000, so you're less than 100,000 a year, essentially. If you take a 5-year program at 500,000, that's 100,000 a year. Well, I think we're going to have to investigate the ramifications of what if you want a 3-year program at 500,000. What if are you going to go for a 5-year at 500,000? Are you going to go a 3-year 500,000? One of the things they've indicated is they're going to keep the annual competitions. So how do you want to commit yourself? and can you keep going for re-up? So what's going to happen is when the guidelines come out, I think APA will get their policies pretty well developed, and we'll be able to ask those questions and get definitive answers. And it's really important that we get those answers as we write our grants, because you don't want to be caught blindsided or do strategically something that you're going to shoot yourself later for. For example, if you do a 3-year 500,000 versus a 5-year 500,000, it depends on how you plan on spending your money, what EPA feels you can do, and they may just leave all that up to you, but we're going to have to find that out. They are going to allow stipends. This kind of hit us from left field because we didn't think that they would allow for any stipends. There's going to be more guidance on this. They're talking about transportation stipends and childcare stipends. Now, a lot of you are getting that as leveraged money. I mean, you're getting transportation from the DOT. You might be getting childcare from leverage, and that's great, because why use EPA money if you're getting it leveraged? And so this is going to play into what you're going to be doing as you write your grants. And so, the rule of thumb is don't use EPA money if you can get it locally through leveraged partnerships. And that's important for a lot of reasons. You want to develop partnerships and develop relationships, because when they buy into your program, they're going to support your program. So again, you want to partner as much as you can, and we'll be talking about this later. If there's no partners and they're still allowing you to do this, and there's going to be guidance, and there's some EPA regulations on that that we'll be digging into at another PLC. They did say, and this is logical and it's a good idea, that everyone is eligible. If you're a FY22 or an FY21 grantee, you can apply for this 500,000. It's going to be a separate grant. So you may be running 2 grants simultaneously. If you're a 22, say you were just awarded a grant in 22, and you want to supplement that funding, you're going to be writing a grant. We could say to supplement your grant, but really it's a new grant, and that'll have its own life and its own start and stop date. It'll be a totally separate. So you'll be running 2 grants, and you may close out the first one before the second one is closed out. So when you start writing your grant, we're going to have to look at, do you want to sync your grants? What do you want to do there? So, but the good news is you can apply for the new grant even if you were 22 or 21 grantee. There is going to be an annual competition, as far as we know. There was only 1 year where they thought they would extend it to 2 years, and that created its own problems. I think the one nice thing about the brownfields job training is, with an annual competition, if you don't get it the first year, you could hang on to your team, and it's not that long before you're going to have to start planning for the next one. So our program, I think what makes this program really great is it allows the smaller organization to get their feet wet and get a federal grant, and then leverage it, and then work up to bigger grants. And many of you in the room today have much, much larger programs than the EPA program, but you built up to that. This was a starter program, and you continued and you got bigger, and it allowed you to get bigger grants. And we've got instances of people, New Jersey Youth Corps is one, or there's others. We can name many, whether it's OAI or Cypress Mandela, who their budgets are 10 times what this grant is. But this grant allowed them to get started. So this idea of, and we're hoping they continue this, our indications are that they're going to continue this annual competition. And you could see where this brings in some issues when you start talking about up to 5 years. You want to write a 3-year grant? Do you want to write a 5-year grant? Do you want to, how we do this? And we're all going to have to get guidance from EPA of how that's going to work out. These guidance, the guidance in the RFA, they're saying about June. So, and once that RFA is out, you have 60 days.
Mike,
yes.
Mike,
yes.
Noemi has her hand raised.
Hey, Noemi, could you help us?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make a comment about the idea, the grant being extended to 5 years. So remember, the last year needs to be tracking. And so at a minimum, all of your training, it's in the terms and conditions, has to be completed 6 months before your grant expires. So it really is getting the work completed in 4 years, not 5 years. The same way with the 3-year grant, getting your work done within 2.5 years, because your terms and conditions require that you have to have at a minimum 6 months of tracking. And so all I'll say on that aspect is we're not necessarily looking with this additional money for you to train necessarily a ton more people. It's not that you need to take your numbers from 80 to 120. It could be that you keep the same 80, but you give them even more skills. So they're not just getting a job, they're getting a career. But that's for you to tell us. That's what you write in your application to make it competitive. So if it's on you, if you have a grant and you get another grant, there really isn't a syncing of two grants. Those operate as two cooperative agreements. You have to meet whatever you said you would do in those work plans. So they will be standalone grants operating. You might be able to save money and have the training at the same time, but you still have to meet the spirit of both of those work plans and both of those grants.
Could you, for example, do a 3-year grant, pretty much have the last year as tracking, but get 500,000 for that?
Depends upon what you're doing for training, I'd say.
Right, right. So in other words, that the length of your period could be any, it could be 1 to, basically you're going to be training from 1 to 4 years, or essentially.
Right, but just remember, when you write a grant, it's not subjective on EPA's part. You're the experts. So as long as you explain, if you can get training done with $500,000 in 2 years, and you can adequately explain how you're doing that, then absolutely do that. But it's what you tell us in the application. It's not a subjective of what we think. It's what you're telling us, and then that's how we'll review it. So just remember the application responding to the guidelines and illustrating and demonstrating through your writing how you can do what we're asking in the guidelines is what's most important. The time frame is really dependent on you.
Okay, so it's going to take a lot of thinking on the grantee applicant's part, how they want to do that. We're going to spend a lot of time. We're going to be finishing up this cycle. We're going to be finishing up next week with a presentation by Coalfields, which is an alumni coming back. But the next cycle will start right after that, 2 weeks after that. So in other words, on the 14th, we'll start the new cycle. And that new cycle is going to be 100% oriented towards responding to the RFA. If the guidelines aren't out yet, there's a lot of things that are operational the same, no matter what kind of grant you do. I mean, whether you're doing labor market assessment or community assessment, those are going to be more generic, and we'll talk about those things, those foundation type of research projects that you got to start as soon as possible. Should be, some of you probably already started. So, but thank you, Noemi. I think these are things that our grantees are going to want to clear up before they start writing this grant.
So I'll just say one last thing, Michael, because I have to get off the phone.
Sure.
I would just encourage everyone. I know we have Rita's on the phone from Region 6, Linda's from Region 5. I see Stephanie on the phone from Region 8. I would just encourage you, whichever region you're in, before the guidelines come out, to have individual conversations with your job training coordinators, kind of give them an idea of what you're thinking about and they can give you feedback before the guidelines come out. So I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of that and do that before the guidelines are posted.
And we always post those in the post-session notes. So if you're on our list, you'll get them on Friday afternoon. If you're not on a list, you could go to HMTRI at eicc.edu, and we'll make sure you're on our PLC list. So you'll get those contact. And that's a really good point. Up until the guidelines, you could talk one-on-one with your regional coordinator. At that point, you go into more of the generic mode of communications where they can't talk about your specific grant. And you definitely want to get on their list, whether they have listservs or Zoom calls, whatever. Every region does it a little differently. So, and I'm sure they're going to have their own meetings. So you'll want to you'll want to get close to your region if you're not already there. The last thing to do with the announcements that were made on the 4th, this they weren't able to change. This is, you know, this goes way back to the Circular Superfund 104K Section 7 that allowed for training. Originally it was at brownfield at Superfund sites, and now it's brownfields and Superfund sites. So that does restrict you on what you could train in terms of technical remediation training using EPA funds. And that list is the same as it was last year. You can go down back to the 22 guidelines, and it's pretty much the same group. You can't go off the guardrails and start training in air, at least with the EPA funds under this grant. You could leverage it and use other funding to do whatever you want, but to be covered under this grant, and we'll talk about this later too, but that has not changed. You're going to have to stay within the guide rails of EPA's mandate. This kind of smokestack appropriation is staying. Any comments anyone else want to make regarding those announcements that were made? Certainly there's going to be a lot more information coming out. We're going to have an opportunity to talk to Channing and clear up any policy issues or questions, and hopefully before that we'll be able to meet, and we want to spend some time, and you want to spend some time getting your questions together, because they're going to have one shot. They usually have a explanation of the guidelines when they come out, and you've got chances here to ask as probing questions as you want of what does this mean, or what should we be training? Is this curriculum okay? That type of thing. So it's a good opportunity for that. Anyone else want to say anything about these major changes that are going on?
Well, this is John Galiotos. I noticed that there's a great demand for wastewater treatment and related in the region. I believe we can provide training in these areas as part of the brownfields, correct?
No. Now here's one of those issues, and one of the grant regional coordinators could comment on it. There's a separate funding mechanism for wastewater, and they're really not part of the OBLR universe. Think of it of Marble and we've got the OBLR universe, which has surrounded itself around hazardous materials. When you get into wastewater, that's a whole wastewater and air are different offices in EPA.
Okay.
They are not contributing to this program. Now, you could do it, but it would be with other people's money.
I understand.
And so that's definitely one of the things we'll go over when we talk about curriculum in the future PLC. Yeah.
Okay. And the second thing is equipment, and I'm pretty big in equipment. I think we can purchase equipment associated with brownfields training with this funding that we have available, correct?
Right, and we'll talk, and that's a good question to Channing when the guidelines come out. Again, I think Noemi hit it. You're in a competitive mode. Actually, obviously, if you put all the money into equipment and then you didn't do sufficient training, that would probably work against you, but everyone needs equipment to train. So that's part of it.
So, and when it comes to equipment, I have experience from various grants. Many of them, if I would say most of them, are asking equipment to be US made. And second is that equipment to be used for other training as well, leveraging to other training as well. And therefore, to demonstrate that the $100,000 for a unit for a training unit or a training system is not only going to provide training for example, brownfields, but also it's going to be used for other purposes associated with that, but they're not part of the grant in the future.
Well, and that's another good question for Channing. Now, leveraging in the other direction is not a problem, because you're going to be using their equipment to to train your people. So that's not an issue. Now, the issue I think that you brought up is using EPA funds to train other program. And that's an excellent question to ask Channing. And there are regulations on all this, and even the attorney of what's an allowable cost. They've gone into it in detail. I don't feel I could answer that question right now, but we'll find out.
Okay. What about the US made? Is this?
Well, that's another question. Good question. I don't think there's an issue on that, but again, Linda or anyone else, Rita, if you have any insight on that. I think those are questions for Channing, and he may have to get answers from the attorney on the grants office on those particular. What I do know is you do want to get the answers to those questions before you put it in the grant, because you put it in wrong, you're going to get marked down. So you definitely, I would write those questions down and make sure you get an answer to them for everybody's sake. You know, whatever question you have, everyone else has the same question. So I think that'd be excellent thing to find out. Anything else? Yes. Hey, you know, you're off. We can't hear you.
You're muted.
I'm sorry, I was waving at a interloper into my Zoom space. My bad.
Okay. We're going to move on to the next subject, but a couple of real quick announcements. Aside from that, this law also gives EPA authority to spend $250 million. This is the other side of the house. We're job training, and we're teaching people how to get jobs at brownfield sites. The other side of the shop is the people actually boots on the ground, the cleanup people, revolving loan fund. They are getting, and the assessment people, they're getting 250 million. We're getting maybe 10 million. So you can see they're 20 times bigger as far as appropriations go. They're working in about 260 communities. We're working in a much smaller, we're working in, maybe 30 communities. It gives you the size difference of the programs. But the reason that we have to bring this up, they just announced it, and all this will be in the post-session notes, but they're giving, they've got cleanup grants, 36 cleanup grants going on. They've got 56 revolving loan fund programs. These are people who are actually doing the work. Now, the thing about the EPA brownfields program, as far as that side of the shop goes, we're actually training people to get jobs. They're actually setting up the process. They don't have workers out in the field. They're not going to be hiring your people, but they will be hiring, the people they're working with will be hiring your people. And this is why they're important. So what it means to the job training community is you really need to get to know those people and have them on your advisory committee and as partners, so they could transfer to you the employers they're using and who is doing the cleanup, who are the actual boots on the ground that you can use, who do you contact to ask them if they need people or if they want to get on your list. So it's important that we work with them. And of course, it's very important too that we're working with the tab providers. They're in the process of getting re-up for a new grant, even much bigger grant, but they provide a lot of technical assistance to these 183 assessment and 56 revolving loan funds and 36 cleanup grants. They're doing what we're doing, trying to help them get these grants and properly write those grants so they could be administered. But they can help, and some are helping also a little bit in looking at some of the crossover issues that have to do with job training as it might relate to the boots on the ground type training. But you need to be aware of it, and we're going to keep you up on what's happening on the other side of the shop. It's a much bigger side of the shop, but it's important because the contractors they're using are the contractors that your graduates will be going to. So that's important. And briefly, before I turn this over to Steve, we got Brownfields 22 coming up. We're going to have a booth. It's going to be not necessarily an HMTRI booth. It's going to be a job training, brownfield job training booth. and it'll be a place where you could meet people and employers. You could just meet us and other people, and we're going to be just have it open to whoever wants to use it and bring your materials to that. There are travel scholarships, but they're due May 31st. I'll put those in the notes you'll get on Friday. You might want to try to get a scholarship. You got to send it in before the end of the month. How to do that is in the post-session notes you get on Friday. The one other thing that's happening at Brownfields 22, I think that's worth, well, a lot of things worth mentioning, but the EJ caucus is very good every year. They get a huge crowd, and it's open to the public. It's on the 15th. And the reason I mention it is actually the official meeting starts on the 16th to the 19th, but this is the night before. It's 5 p.m. Usually goes for 2 or 3 hours at a separate venue. And it's all about EJ. And EJ is extremely important this year. Everybody's going to be talking about EJ and technical assistance. And there's going to be a lot of funding going to technical assistance and environmental justice. And we'll be, again, talking about that at a future date. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve. And he wants to summarize the May 4th meeting and what we did. And we'll, again, put in the notes more detailed information that he'll be able to give you in this short call. Steve, you want to, any questions up to this point today? Okay, Steve.
Okay, and Mike, I'm getting that same notice that you got yesterday, unstable internet connection. So I have already made you co-host if something happens to me and I drop off. I don't expect it to happen, but it could. Just to follow up on the Brownfield 2022, I had an email yesterday from one of our grant recipients, and they were asking about housing. So it's good that you mentioned that, Mike, because I also gave them a link to the Brownfield site, which will take them right to the housing and how they go about that. But I also mentioned, as you did, the travel assistance, travel scholarships. And like Mike said, those are only available for a short period of time. So if you're thinking about going, you might want to consider checking out housing and also the assistance. Yeah, hi, Linda.
Hi, just one quick thing. I think there is a wait list for the hotels. They have 7, the housing organizers have 7 hotels that they have blocked off rooms with. But I believe that there is a wait list for most of them. I don't think they have a full list of availability for the week. So I think they have scattered rooms here and there. So just keep that in mind. And also, I just wanted to let everyone know regarding Brownfields, the Brownfields conference, that this year we have the Brownfields University. So I know we will all be together regarding job training, but if you're interested in other aspects of the Brownfields program, there is a Brownfields 101 setting the state for Brownfields revitalization, as well as some other courses that you can take in those. It's called the Brownfields University, and that's occurring on Tuesday. I think it's that Tuesday. So when you go to the website, you can see all of those courses. I believe it is 6 courses. And regarding the Brownfields 101, Noemi and both Shanine are presenting at that in that course. And so again, if you just want to know a little bit about the program beyond job training, then you can just go to the university, take a couple of those courses, and give you some more information. So I just wanted to mention that.
Awesome, thank you. And thanks for the information on the hotel too, because I know they've got a number of hotels and they're kind of filling up. So you might want to check into those right away if you haven't already. As far as the announcements go, one of the things we're doing, actually, it's going to be something we're going to use at the Brownfields conference, and that is we're putting together another update of the grant recipient directory. And thank you, Abby, for completing yours and sending it in today. It's really important. We use this information for a number of things. Brownfield, National Brownfields, also EPA staff can find a lot of information on there about what other grant recipients are doing, and also national employers can check, and see what the status is of your program and who's graduating and what certifications do they have. So we're putting that together again. In fact, I think you probably received a link from HMTRI the other day, and I'm going to send it again here in the chat box. So if you haven't filled out the grant recipient directory and you'd like to, there's a form link there that you can click on, and oh shoot. Sorry about that, got bounced out. But anyway, send a copy of the link for the grant recipient directory. And if you could fill it out if you haven't already, that would be greatly appreciated. And as far as the in-person all grantee meeting that we're planning in October 11th through the 14th, we're still in the planning stages of that, but those dates are still good. So you might, again, make a note if you're planning to attend in Alexandria, Virginia. It's going to be fantastic to be back face-to-face again. So we're looking forward to it. Also wanted to mention that on June 1st at the next PLC, we're going to be welcoming back Coalfields. They're a grantee that was a 2015 social enterprise job training grant. And we're going to welcome them back, and they're going to talk about the things that they're involved in. They have some innovative fundraising strategies, and they're not only a social enterprise, but they combine that with job training. So they're an interesting grantee that you might, hear some very interesting things from. And then, as Mike said, just to kind of recap the mid-year networking workshop, what we thought we would do is just, and I'm going to share my screen here and just share some of the highlights. A full report will be in the notes, but there were several topics. Just wanted to kind of run through them here. These were some of the questions. Who are your best partners and what do they provide? A common one was regional planning commissions, universities, Metro Council of Governments, career centers within the city, Department of Labor, Department of Justice, relationships with various city government officials, and then foundations, like in this particular case, the GM Foundation, the Kellogg Foundation, and other philanthropic sources. And partners are mainly around environmental agencies. So a number of partners that people indicated that they work with. Another question was, who hires your graduates? Just kind of a summary. Temp agencies came up a lot. So did partners who are also advisory committee members. They're on the advisory committee, which is an excellent source of both, people for your advisory committee and for employers. And it's really good to have those kind of folks on your committee. And then private sector employers in a variety of different fields. We've had, manufacturing, chemical plants, etc. A lot of different types of employers and contractors as well. Another question we posed was, who provides life skills training? The common ones were that they partnered with organizations like the Department of Commerce or Health and Human Services, and then also their own staff. A lot of the job training grantees have their own staff that provides life skills training, and then job centers can provide it as well. How do you select your advisory committee members, and how often do you meet? Well, one was we have an advisory board that's spread out through the state. And the way they do this is they have Zoom meetings and also contact them via, email and phone. Steering committees consisting of a career center, community college, members of the community. Another one said we get together a lot at the beginning, like once a week, and then moving forward, that drops off, as things become more established. What are methods that you use to recruit participants? Again, these are just some highlights. The full report is much longer. It goes into much more detail, but these are just some ideas. The website, or the organization's website, flyers, radio, word of mouth. A lot of people use social media now, including websites, Facebook, Instagram, and then word of mouth. A lot of people said they get a lot of referrals to their program through word of mouth. People that have gone through it, been trained, had a good experience, they recommend it to others, and that certainly helps attract participants. Alumni, family, and leaving language with case managers, having one-on-one meetings with clients, and again, sending out flyers to county jails, addiction centers, veterans office, youth centers, immigrant assistance center. So a number of different ways that folks recruit. What's the criteria used to screen applicants? Required documents, state IDs. Some require proof of vaccination, TABE testing and work skills, requiring a 7th grade reading comprehension level, and some say high school or GED equivalent. And then, do you use drug testing as a screening tool? I know this first answer here in our group, we had like 8 people that responded and 7 said, yes, they do use it. And it seemed to be, it depended on the situation with the different groups. Employers request drug-free employees. And some groups are already being monitored in the program, like people on probation and parole. And then, of course, there was discussion about safety concerns of individuals coming to work under the influence. So these were some of the topics discussed under this question. What strategies and/or services do you provide to retain participants? It varied. Some provided stipends, transportation, support services, barrier mitigation, continued case management to address barriers to assist with personal goals all the way through the program and even beyond. Building relationship with clients and case management, career counseling, career coaching, and then ongoing job placement support, including resumes and cover letters, mock interviews, and those sorts of things. And then we were curious to know, besides HAZWOPER, what are your primary EPA supported courses? And you can see the list here. I won't go through all of them, but it's quite extensive. It includes bloodborne pathogens, first aid, mold, asbestos, lead. Those are some of the more common ones. And then as you scroll down, forest fire, DOT, hazmat, solid waste, NFPA focus on transportation, and so on. So quite a few different courses. And then how do you find technical trainers? Another question we had, and it seems like there's basically 2 methods that were the most common. Some organizations have people on staff that are technical trainers, and then the other method generally is contracting with them. And an excellent example is firefighters, who are often contracted with to provide, HAZWOPER training, or they may have the facilities or expertise to do it. So they're frequently good partners. And then combination of in-house and outsourced training partners. So some of the training's done in-house, some of it's contracted out. And then they procure instructors every 3 years was one comment they post on the website, and then candidates respond with proposals, and they select based on a rubric. And then what type of training do you deliver online? That also kind of varied. Some said we just strictly do face-to-face. Others said they recommend FEMA online for just some of the core programs. Some have adopted a hybrid training program. Some just do OSHA in person, but not online. Some do OSHA 10 online. And then again, the hybrid method was cited several times. And then work directly with contractors to provide OJT, and then do a series of training, spiritual training, body, mind, and spirit approach. Loyalty and retention comes from building trust. And then we talked about maintaining COVID protocols. How many people are maintaining protocols? And if so, what are they doing? Are they still require, or do they require vaccines? Do they require masking? Do they require social distancing, or all the above, or none of the above? And we kind of went through that and found that it was kind of mixed. One of the first comments said they still had a masking protocol in place until May 17th. Some required vaccination and social distancing, hand sanitizing. Some required, again, vaccinations or showing a negative test if not vaccinated. That was a common response. And so that was kind of interesting. And some are doing like the smaller class sizes. And a lot have said they're kind of moving back to the face-to-face. And then the final question was, how often do you realign your curriculum with employer needs? And it really kind of varied depending on the grant recipient. For some, it was basically they just kind of go year to year and look at what is being offered, and they have employers that they will ask if this training is still meeting the needs. And then again, direct communication with those employers is probably the most frequently cited method. And then they have one said they had a construction roundtable to find out which jobs need employees, and then also find out what those skills were. So this, again, that was just kind of a quick condensed version of the workshop. Now the evaluation conclusions. We did do evaluation at the end, and you can see the very first part here. 100% of respondents strongly agreed or agreed with the goals and objectives of HMTRI mid-year brainstorming workshop were presented and clear. The facilitators and recorders were well prepared and professional. The time allotted for the workshop was sufficient for my learning, and I had the opportunity to contribute to the discussion. The presentation technology, Zoom, was effective, and that's even though we had a slight, hiccup with that. And I will use the content at the workshop in my training program. So all of those, everyone that responded either strongly agreed or agreed with those statements. And then 96% of the respondents, basically all but one, strongly agreed or agreed with the informal brainstorming workshop was format was effective, and the workshop content was appropriate and well organized. And then we had 83% of the respondents basically, I achieved my personal objectives by attending the workshop, and that's basically all, but I think 4 people either strongly agreed or agreed with that. And we had one person who responded who was apparently in the workshop and had been referred to it, but it wasn't what he thought it was. So, and I think he was one of those who, didn't agree or agree with the statement. But that's it. Overall, the evaluations were very good. We got a lot of feedback, a lot of suggestions for, what to do the next time around. And this took a lot of work from our recorders, and I will acknowledge one of those recorders who's here, or was here. Is Jake still around?
He has now a 4-week-old at home.
Oh,
So
okay.
if he left, he's probably playing dad duty.
Okay, well, please let him know that we really appreciated his effort, because it's a lot of work to do the recording. And I will ask, Nolan, do you have any comments or anything you want to add? That's just a short, condensed overview. Do you have any 30,000 feet, observations?
Well, other than our group was the best, I do feel that we had a good level of participation and response from people in the group on the different issues. I probably came a little short because I didn't do very well with the parking lot of other issues that were not being directly addressed, by question. So I'm sure that some of the participants may have had other issues or other questions, but I didn't have a good handle on getting those into the conversation and thus into the notes. So that would be the only shortcoming, and that was more on my part as a facilitator. But otherwise, I thought we had very good participation and people had good comments and were succinct.
Well, Nolan, I will rush to your defense because you had to get up at 5 a.m. to join this session. So we appreciate your extra effort. Also, Mike, before I forget, I wanted to mention we actually had some very good video clips, and one of them was from the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes, and I know Rachel's on here, but I think she's driving her child home, so I won't ask her to speak. But theirs was very good, and then we also had some from Santa Fe. Janet's on here, and that was awesome. And then we had one from CDC of Tampa. David Jones submitted one that was really good. And then we also showed one from LA Conservation Corps, thanks to Michael who's on, and Alyssa Manspeaser from Land Force shared one too. So they were really good. The links of all those are going to be in the notes. So if you didn't come or you didn't stay for the after hour session and see those, you might want to take a look at those because they're really, really good. And just want to thank everybody who participated and came. It was fantastic. And as Mike said earlier, all this information, and not just the condensed version I gave, but the larger full report will be included in the notes.
There'll be actually the full report will be on the website, a very long report, but we'll put a condensed version in the notes on Friday. I think the goal of this workshop was maybe participants went home with maybe a light bulb went off on something that they hadn't thought about. And through this whole thing, they may have a staff meeting and say, you know, have we thought of this or have we thought of that? And one thing you'll notice is going through those summaries is a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And that plays into what Noemi said about the grant applications occurring this summer. Everyone's going to be a little different. It's going to be highly dependent on your labor market assessment, which is really not a traditional assessment, but it's more of getting to know the employers who are going to be hiring your graduates and getting a real good relationship with people who are looking to hire people like the people you're graduating, or people they've maybe never tried it before, but are willing to work with your graduates, getting to know them and finding out what they're looking for. And you addressing that in your curriculum, but then also looking at the community assessment and truly understanding the people you're training. They're your customers. And on that side of the equation, you've got to find out what is it going to take to keep these people interested, motivated, how you're going to select them, how difficult your courses are going to be. So it's this balancing act on one side of placing the people, which is the ultimate goal of the program, and finding the people who are truly worthy of the program, but you'll be able to place also. So it's this balancing act. Probably the two most important phases of this is the recruitment and community assessment, and then of course the placement and your partnerships, getting to know who's going to hire your people. And so you've got this thing you're going to have to work through. And as Noemi said, expressing that in your grant application is going to be the challenge. Unfortunately, the reviewers can't visit your program. You can't assume they're going to know anything about your program. So you have to start collecting this data, and when it's time to start putting this on paper, we'll be talking about that, but being very succinct and describing what you're going to be doing. Anyone have any questions about this or what's going on? Okay. we're going to do another one in 2 weeks, and then we're going to reorient it over towards the RFA that's going to be coming out. I really wish they would give you maybe 3 months instead of 2 months to do this, but they have their own schedules. Keep in mind, the application is due in 2 months, but then I probably won't hear about whether you're accepted until early next year. So there's a certain amount of advanced planning you have to do.
Could I ask a quick question? You mentioned that they're coming out with the RFA soon. Is there a way to get like on a listserv or something so that we can get notified when it comes out?
If you're on the PLC list, correct? You got a notice of this meeting?
Yeah.
Did you? Okay. As soon as it comes out, we'll send you all of that.
Oh, great. Okay.
We'll make sure you have it probably the same day that it's released. And
Awesome.
we don't know until it's issued that it's issued. So we'll get it. Not only will we send you that, but we'll shortly schedule, probably 2 weeks later after it's announced, they'll do Channing, the head of that program, will have a Zoom explaining the RFA. And I'm hoping we could have a PLC before that so we could spend some time looking at questions we may want to make sure we get answered, so that you just don't want to be caught 2 weeks before it's due and not sure if something you're putting down is going to landmine your program, or knock you out or diminish your program. So we really want to be very clear on what they're looking for. And again, Noemi said, it's not on EPA, it's about you writing it, but you've got to know what to write. And for example, you can't do a wastewater training with EPA funds. You've got to know that, or you can't do an air unless you're doing it with leverage funds. So those are the kind of things we need to know. And in your mind, you're going to have to decide, are you going to go 3 years for 500,000, 5 years for 500,000? Those are all things that you're going to have to think through and respond.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
One thing we know is there is a lot of money going into technical assistance. I mean, we've been on call, environmental justice. There is a huge program being planned on environmental justice. It has to do with what we call Justice 40, and there's tens of millions of dollars being allocated to communities to look at environmental justice and make sure that we're addressing underserved communities. And so there's a lot of this program is going to be a lot different. I mean, we're going from 3.8 million to probably over 10 million on this program. So a lot to look forward to. Do we have anything in the chat or any questions? Okay. Well, with that, let's go back and enjoy the rest of the day. And
You mean write the reports?
yeah.
Yeah, Mike, I had a quick one, and it's worth as much as you pay for it. I strongly recommend that you get some mechanism of quality assurance or QA when you're writing your proposal, a second pair of eyes to really look at and read over and make sure that you are responding to the questions or issues that are in the request. Because sometimes things are left out and you answer 4 out of 5, but there's no response on one of them. And then also that's all you're responding to, that you're not adding a number of things that have nothing to do with the EPA program or its funding, kind of like what Mike was alluding to. And no, I mean, that you're not trying to include things that are outside of the scope of the request. But I don't speak for EPA. I've never reviewed proposals for them, but I have for other agencies. And I do know one of the big hitters we have is just when somebody, comes up blank on a whole section where we're looking for, answers or an example, and they're just not there. So again, it's good to have that second pair of eyes and somebody who can go over what you've done independent of actually writing it. And at some of those things.
It breaks my heart when I see the funded list, and I know there are applicants who have really good programs that don't make it. And when you look at the reasons, they may have a half a dozen other things to do, and they couldn't respond in those 60 days to write an adequate proposal, or they're not good at putting words on paper. I mean, you could have an incredible program, and if you don't address those ranking criteria properly, that's what they read. And that's, I think that's a tragedy of the way these things work. I don't know any other way of doing it, though. So we have to go along with it. So, okay, well, let's go our merry ways and enjoy the rest of the day. I've got to plant some plants. I bought plants last weekend and they're still sitting in the back drying out.
Come on, Mike.
Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everybody,
All right.
for joining this week. See you in a
Thanks,
couple of
Mike,
weeks.
Steve.
Thank
You
you.
bet.
Take care.
See you next time.
There we
Bye-bye.
go.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Hey, Steve and Mike.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
I didn't know if you wanted to, on this call or a later call, follow up on what we had talked about.
We do.
Okay.
And do we want to end this call and go on? Do you have the address for the team call? Do you have that in your?
I know nothing. My brain
Okay.
sunburned.
What if we jump off and jump back on?
Okay.
Well, you mean on this link?
Right.
Oh, I guess we could. Otherwise, yeah, let's do that.
You want me to stay on or go
Yeah,
off and
well,
back?
why don't we leave and then come back to this link? And
Okay.
if that doesn't work, then Steve will send us a link, right, Steve?
Yeah, I think it will. Wait a minute. Hold on a second here.
Or you could just send us, do you have email handy or text message handy? Steve can send us a text message with the new link.
Hold on, Mike. Hold on just a second here. Okay.
Whoop.
Well,
Okay. We could just
We don't have
maybe
to-
it's just the three of us now anyway. So
Well,
Yeah.
that's because I removed them all. So
Okay.
I have the power.
Oh man, you are
Wow.
smart.
And I actually, let's see.